Okay, welcome back everybody. Now it's time for the long-awaited part 2 of the Creality K1 versus P1P comparison. I wanted to take some time and really get to use these printers, so I've been using this K1 for the past 2 months. I've had this P1P for about 6 months, so I've really got the hours in on these machines, and now I can make a little bit more of an informed opinion about which one might be right for you. I've prepared a final print job for these two machines. I've got a print-in-place mechanism here with this scissor snake model, my standard calibration print, and then I've got my Jesse head over here. I don't know why I'm printing out Uncle Jesse's head, but it's just a model I had on my computer, so I figured why not. While those prints are getting started up, I'm going to tell you about today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. This is a huge upgrade over my previous table. You can see it's able to lift my substantial weight as well as these two printers. And the nice thing about this is, if I need to work on my printers or film something, you can bring things up to an ergonomic working position so that you're not having to bend over to work on things. Also, it's important to have a nice sturdy desk when you're running your 3D printers. You know how a lot of people put their printers on the floor because that's the only stable surface that they have? Well, this table's nice and sturdy, as you can see. We'll give it a little shake test. This is actually quite sturdy for a desk. I have my older desk here, and you can see when I wobble it, it just keeps shaking, rocking back and forth for a while. This FlexiSpot desk is built with much thicker steel beams, and it's just a lot sturdier overall. So I think it'll hold up a lot better during these 3D print tests. When I was comparing some of my old printers on my old desk, I was genuinely concerned that that thing was going to shake itself apart and cause all the printers to come crashing down and destroy stuff. But on this table, I think it's a lot sturdier and should hold up to the violent shaking of these machines much better. Also, the integrated cable management down here makes it super easy to have a tidy wiring setup. I've always had a mess under my desk when it comes to wiring, but now with this FlexiSpot desk, I have all my wires neatly managed in here, so everything's super clean and it just makes everything look a lot better. So big thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this episode. They're actually priced very competitively, so if you're looking for a desk, check out the pricing in the affiliate links down below. Alright, so let's get back to the print tests and we'll see how this desk holds up as we start our print jobs. One improvement that they've made to the P1P since it's launched is they updated the decompression algorithm, so basically it starts printing faster. Whenever you started up a print job, there was this lengthy unzipping phase of the print where it would spend 3 to 15 minutes just unzipping the file. They've cut down that unzip time dramatically, however it still takes some time and the interface on this thing still sucks. Also, unfortunately, I'm not able to benefit from that faster decompression algorithm because for some reason, my P1P's networking capabilities have stopped working, so I can't upload new firmware to it. You can see here in my Bambu studio, when I try and click my printers and show what's on my network, it's just not showing up. On the K1, you're able to upload firmware using a USB stick, which is kind of standard practice for most machines, so you can keep it up to date and running without having to connect it to the cloud, which I think is a big advantage. You can also do wireless updates on this machine where you just have it update through Creality Cloud or whatever. But I like running my machines offline, so I'm glad that you can update the firmware on this machine without hooking it up to the internet and going through all the TOS agreements and all that kind of stuff. I just enabled tree supports and I'm slicing it. This is one thing that I hate about Cura-based slicers is they take forever. Compared to anything that's based on Prusa slicer, that tends to run things a lot faster. So here we go, we finally got it to finish slicing. Alright, there's our tree supports. I'm just going to use land printing here. Confirm. I'm going to click K1 and do one-click printing. That's just going to send this file over to the printer and execute it. Bambu Studio is just as easy to use in theory, but since my LAN isn't working, I have to upload it through that little micro SD card. Alright, so now our K1 has just started up its print job. Meanwhile, we've got our P1P over here, getting a little bit of a head start. So I let Creality Print pretty much decide how to slice this model, and as you can see, it's doing a pretty good job, but since I added this modification, the retraction settings aren't perfect, so it's causing a little bit of stringing. Also, back here you can see the support tree material that they put down. It's just a single perimeter that's supposed to hold that to the print tray. They should probably put a little bit more material down just to get better bed adhesion for that support structure. Also, if you look right here, the extrusion on this little perimeter layer isn't perfect. Let's just compare that to the P1P for a minute. One of the P1P's greatest strengths is how well it's tuned right out of the box. Alright, so it looks like I was actually printing at 240 for that first layer until I just turned it down. On the slicer settings, I had it set to 220, so I'm not sure why it was running at 240. That excess heat is probably what was causing the issues on that first layer. So before we get into our final thoughts about these two machines, let's discuss what happened with this final print test. So on this P1P, everything went pretty smoothly. We got excellent print quality all around. The only issue that I saw was on this Jessie head. We had some under extrusion. This would be a severe weakness in a mechanical part, so I'm not sure what was causing that under extrusion, but it's an artifact that we really dislike to see. You definitely wouldn't want to be trusting your life to a part printed on a machine like this. But in terms of the support material, it seems really well done. So that came off pretty easily, and we've got our nice little print here. Overall, a really good result. Let's try the Jessie head on this K1. This tree support is just kind of peeling away. It looks like this support material was under extruded a little bit. That might be the fault of Creality print, or it could be my hacky way of changing the flow ratio for the material because I put this new hot end on and I can't update the E-steps. Also on the squarish test print, there's some issues with the print quality. We have a bunch of just crap hanging off right here. I'm pretty sure that was because it started building a tree support on the base platform here, and I peeled that off when it was printing the first layer, but that was a mistake on my part and it prevented this tree from being properly anchored there. However, I can just pull that away. It didn't cause the print to fail. One of the issues that I have with the support material that it printed is there's no brim on the support material. So it's just relying on a single perimeter to hold this down to the bed, which isn't the best solution. I prefer what the P1P did here, where it prints a little raft or brim around each of the tree supports, which really helps them hold that in place and get a more successful print overall. Going back to the Jessie head, it looks like the supports came off about as clean as they did on the P1P. There's not a whole lot of difference here. One thing I'm noting is there's no little bits of under extrusion. Both prints look pretty good, however, I'm going to give the edge to the P1P in terms of overall print quality. I think the print looks a lot better coming off of this P1P. On the K1, there's a little bit of inconsistent layer lines. On this calibration test print, I left the supports on, so it built up some tree supports. Yeah, we're just peeling that away and we're left with really nice steep overhang surfaces. In terms of the overall print performance, all the text came out legible on here. I would say the P1P is easier to read overall and is a nicer, cleaner print. However, we've got that random under extruded layer. On this P1P, it seems like the support material is stuck on a little bit better. So again, I'm going to say on the P1P, the prints turned out looking nicer. However, there's this one random layer that's under extruded, which is kind of bothering me. The last print we're going to take a look at is this print-in-place mechanism. It's this pair of scissors here. See if we can extend it. I always like to break it free by just pulling on it like this. And there we go. It works really good. Pow! Okay, and then on the P1P, let's see. Breaking it loose was a lot easier on the P1P. I just had to actuate the handles here and it broke free. Versus on the K1, I had to pull it apart to break everything free. But overall, this seems to be a tighter mechanism. It's really nice and smooth. On this P1P, it seems like, well, I'll compare them side by side. The P1P, you can hear it rattling. The K1, you can't hear it rattling. This P1P, maybe it printed everything extremely accurately and reproduced the tolerances that are supposed to be in this model. But in any case, it seems like it's a little bit looser. So overall, I like the result that came off of the K1 a little bit better. In terms of the overall surface finish, I would say the P1P looks a little bit better. However, in terms of the functionality of the two prints, the K1 takes the win. I printed out one of these articulating ties on both machines. I think the one that came out on the P1P looks a little bit better. One, because I like the color scheme of blue and white more than this black and red color scheme. But also because the P1P has like a better tuning and calibration. So that means you get better straight lines and cleaner corners. Versus on the K1, you can see some random bulging and over extrusion and under extrusion in different areas. And that's one of my frustrations with this machine compared to the P1P. On all of the Bambu Lab machines that I've seen, they're extremely well tuned and they're getting the most out of the hardware, and I think that's something Creality needs to work on. Alright, so now it's time for the final thoughts and conclusions about these two machines. Now get a bowl of popcorn or your favorite snack or maybe a beer. The common strengths on these two machines is excellent hardware, excellent print quality, an excellent feature set. Let's go over some strengths that are unique to the P1P over the K1. This thing is built and tuned to perfection. It gets excellent print quality right out of the box. I haven't bothered to change or tune any of the slicer settings out of Bambu Studio because Bambu Lab did a great job of tuning all of the print profiles and making sure that they're well tested. I think Bambu Lab and Prusa are kind of unique in the market because they've validated a bunch of print settings and material settings, so it's a much easier click-to-print experience. Most other competitors in the 3D printing arena suffer from an issue where they're not providing the most tuned profiles for their printers. With the Bambu Lab printers, you just load up the filament, select the profile for that filament, and hit print, and it works 95% of the time. This machine is able to print at higher speeds and higher quality than 90% of the 3D printers on the market, which makes it a no-brainer to pick up for most people. There's a few caveats when it comes to this printer, but overall it's an incredibly competent machine and it's really good for anyone who's wanting to get into 3D printing. What I really love about this K1 is that it's a huge improvement over Creality's previous attempts at building a high-performance 3D printer. They've met or exceeded a lot of the performance characteristics of the P1P, and they kind of took some inspiration from the P1P, like the bed leveling system, using the 3 load cells attached to the print tray. I mean, that pretty much got lifted and put onto the K1 exactly as Bambu Lab implemented it. Bambu Lab entering into the market with these high-performance machines really made them focus on building a high-speed, high-performance printer. I really like the touchscreen interface compared to what you have on the P1P. This touchscreen is really bright and responsive and lets you do most of the functions of the machine right there. You don't have to pull out your phone and use the app or get onto your computer and connect to it to be able to do basic functions. You can just do everything through the printer itself, which is really nice. The fact that this is enclosed really sets it apart from the P1P. Having that fully enclosed area makes it so that you can print materials like ABS, polycarbonate, and other materials. The other thing I really like about the K1 is the smoothness of the offline workflows. So let's say you're not connected to the internet for some reason. Sending files over to the K1 or getting them onto the printer using removable flash storage like a USB drive is very easy on this K1. Compared to the P1P, you have to use this little SD card and plug it into your printer and then put it back in there, and the printer can't operate unless it's got an SD card installed in there. So it's kind of a little bit more tedious, and if you don't want to use Creality Print, you want to use Prusa Slicer or something, you can take your old profiles from like your Ender 3 or your Ender 5 S1 and just slice your files and load them onto this printer and it'll run them just fine. Alright, now let's talk about what I hate about these printers. Let's start with the K1. I mean, it's got a fan that's on 24/7, which I generally despise on a machine, so let's just go ahead and turn it off. Creality has simultaneously managed to steal the work of Clipper developers and piss them off immensely, while also making a product that's less functional. I think it'd be better if Creality just used stock Clipper, because this machine would be a lot better if I had access to all of the tuning and calibration tools that are available in Clipper. So the sooner you open source this and unlock the full potential of this machine, the better. And I think basing Creality Print off of Cura is a mistake. I don't like Cura. I much prefer the Prusa Slicer workflow. Maybe that's a matter of personal opinion, but I just like the workflow more. The other issues on the K1 is it's got slightly degraded print quality compared to their previous products. I think I've been able to get higher quality prints out of my Ender 3 S1, my Ender 5 S1, even my Ender 3 V2. So this machine isn't about getting better print quality, it's about getting higher speeds. And they've traded off a little bit of print quality to get those speeds. I think that's kind of a step in the wrong direction. You should be focusing on quality and speed at the same time. Also, I think the extruder on this machine needs to be redesigned. Basically, the construction inside of the print head is just not ideal. I think there's a lot of tried and true designs like this LGX Lite, like the Sherpa Mini. All these other extruders on the market are extremely compact and reliable, so I don't see why Creality decided to reinvent the wheel here. Alright, and now let's turn our attention to the P1P, which I've been very vocal about hating on some aspects of this machine, and we'll give the audience a little refresher here. The main things that I dislike about this P1P are this user interface. It's complete garbage. you have to switch over to using your phone to get on the Wi-Fi. And in order to use your phone to get on the Wi-Fi, you have to download the Bambu Handy app. Then you have to create an account just so that you can get this thing on your Wi-Fi network. And in order to use the Bambu Handy app, you have to create an account and agree to their terms of service and privacy policy, which, if you've bothered to read it, is a huge red flag for anyone using these machines for commercial purposes. If you're working under an NDA with another company, if you're working on defense-related items, because if you've bothered to read it, the privacy policy says they get to take the webcam footage. Also, there's third parties that Bambu Lab works with for various purposes that they can redistribute your CAD data to. So you upload your stuff to your printer, you think, no, I'm just printing this at home. Well, no, Bambu Lab is taking a copy of that 3D data and they're storing that data. Now they are using this for customer service and improvement, but the bottom line is that this data is being shared with third parties. Those third parties are going to do if they use it inappropriately. I just don't need webcams in every single device in my house. I think there's already a lack of privacy enough with your phone and your laptop having webcams. I think adding one to your printer is just something that's not really necessary, especially when that data is being beamed over the cloud. So if you're working on open source projects or your main hobbies include printing Pokemon on your 3D printer, then this might not concern you. If you want to do firmware updates, you're going to have to connect this to the cloud. If you're running Bambu Studio on your computer, that has some cloud functionalities and sign-ins and stuff. So Bambu Lab has ways of getting your data off of your computer and into their servers, whether you're using LAN mode or not. And if you decide you want to update your firmware, you have to connect it to the internet. I don't believe there's a way to update the firmware on these machines without connecting it to the cloud, versus on the Creality K1 and a lot of other printers, they have the firmware file available for download, so you can download it on a USB drive, plug it in, and update your firmware that way. As far as I know, there's no way to update the firmware on this machine except by doing it through the cloud. Another thing I don't like about this machine is it's basically impossible to mod. If there's something you don't like on this printer, that's too bad. You're just going to have to live with it the way that it is. And if you do decide to mod it, then that'll probably void your warranty and you won't get any support from Bambu Lab to fix it. And the convenient thing about this little webcam is it can see if you've installed a third-party mod. You know, it's got footage of like, hey, that's not supposed to be on there, so we can deny that warranty claim. The other thing I don't like about this is it's reliant on the phone and computer to do basic settings. For example, I have this Bambu Lab AMS. I'm not sure how to get it to work on here because basically the Wi-Fi decided to stop working on this machine. How am I supposed to set up and learn how to use that AMS when everything's offline and the only interface I have with the machine is this crappy little button remote control looking thing? I think it's just kind of daunting to figure out how to use it. I think it'd be much better if my LAN actually worked so I could figure out how to use these things and get some multi-material, multicolor prints working, but it's just really challenging and I can't really figure it out, so that's where I'm at with that. So I've got a lot to complain about with both of these machines, but I want to offer some advice to these companies. For Bambu Lab, I feel like you really need to improve the offline workflow. Whether you want to work offline for security reasons, or if the Wi-Fi on your machine breaks and you're forced to run the machine offline, it should be easy to use. I don't think this is easy to use in its current state because I'm having to fumble around with that tiny little SD card. Adding support for a thumb drive and being able to update the firmware offline would be a big advantage for me, and I wish that they would provide some kind of functionality like that. Also, I don't want my printer, the Bambu Handy app, or Bambu Studio sending any information back to Bambu Lab. As far as I'm concerned, the things that I print on my machines should be kept private. I think it's good to offer an unenclosed version, but a lot of people want to print higher temperature materials, and I think it would make this printer a lot more useful if it had an enclosure. It shouldn't cost that much, and they've got the technology to do it, so it's something that I think they should do right away so that it's more in line with what the K1 is offering. Alright, so my advice to Creality for this K1 is to redo the extruder, put something better on there that's not going to have any reliability issues. I know it's annoying to have to redesign something you've spent all the money and tooling to produce, but moving forward with a design that isn't 100% reliable is unacceptable in my opinion. I don't think software and firmware design has ever been Creality's strong suit. I think they're really good at producing affordable printers at a very low price point and just flooding the market with them. They've got the mass production specialties and they've got a recognizable brand name that allows them to sell a ton of units. So just do what you're good at and let other people take care of the rest, and I think that would be the best option for Creality moving forward. Bambu Lab has the benefit of all of that cloud data. They're just harvesting everyone's data. They're figuring out how people are using the machines and what kind of slicer settings can be adjusted to get better quality and better speed out of their printers. And they're folding that data back into their slicer and their firmware to improve the quality of their prints and improve the speed of their prints. Creality needs to be doing the same thing and just making sure that the software and firmware is as good as it can be. All right, and a question that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering is, which machine is right for me? Do I want to get the P1P or should I get the K1? Personally, I wouldn't get either of them. I think that the K1 has a few hardware problems. I think Bambu Lab is a little bit problematic in how much data they're harvesting from you. They're getting your personal information, selling it to advertisers probably. For me, I'd rather just not be connected to the cloud at all. None of my machines are connected to the internet, they're just on a local network. So that gives me some degree of privacy, but still it's not ideal because this is closed source hardware running on a somewhat closed sourced slicer. Sure, the slicer is open source, but there's plugins that Bambu Lab has installed on top of it that are closed source. So with Bambu Lab, I think you should pick this machine up if you just want something that's fast and prints with high quality right out of the box. However, that privacy thing is just like a non-starter for me. For these reviews, I'm just printing this random crap, so I don't really care. But if I was working on anything that I wanted to develop into a commercial product, I would not print it on this machine. For casual users who just want to print stuff that's available on the internet, I think this would be a great printer for you. For the K1, I think this is a great printer if you want to get into high-speed printing, and it's got really good offline workflows, so if you're working on something private, you can run a different slicer and just manually insert things into this machine, and you're in control of what comes in and goes out of this machine. Also, the fact that this comes with an enclosure means you can print higher temperature materials like ABS, nylon, polycarbonate. With those pros and cons in mind, I think the K1 offers an excellent value and is still a good choice for a lot of people. For the average user, I would actually advise you to buy neither of these machines because I think the joy of 3D printing comes from being able to just modify your printers, printing things now and then and just having fun with it. These high-speed printers is just like a pissing contest that I don't really care to participate in. The only useful application for high-speed printing, in my opinion, is if you're doing research and development and you're doing rapid prototyping, then having your prints come out as fast as possible is extremely useful because it allows you to iterate more and improve your design. If you're just printing the occasional Pokemon and your printer is sitting idle 95% of the time, the only benefit you're going to get from a speed printer is instead of your printer sitting idle 95% of the time, it's going to sit idle 99% of the time. So unless you have an actual need to have high throughput on your printers or to be able to print something out as fast as possible, it's really not advisable to get either of these machines. You should just get something that gets the job done for as cheap as possible. In terms of value, I think the P1P is an excellent value because it's larger, it prints more reliably, has a more convenient and easier to use slicer, so a lot of advantages there. However, on the K1, you've got a bunch of additional features. You've got the full enclosure, you got the better touchscreen interface, the better offline workflow. You can print higher temperature materials because it's enclosed. So there's a lot of pros and cons to each machine. It's up to you which one you think is right for your application. Personally, I hate the cloud, so it's hard for me to use a machine like this. I'm actually working on a way to take this off the Bambu cloud. I'm going to run one of these off of a Sonic pad, so it's going to be fun. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see a Bambu Lab printer running on a Sonic pad, just for the memes. If you want the features that the K1 has on a Bambu Lab printer, you got to upgrade to the X1C, which is significantly more expensive. It's over twice as expensive as the K1. And then in terms of the K1 Max, I'm not sure how that's going to fit into this whole lineup. The K1 Max is going to be even bigger than the X1C and less expensive. So we'll see what happens there. I think that'll be an interesting time. Creality, their business model has always been to make as many printers as possible, make them as cheap as possible, as accessible as possible, and just get them out there and sell massive numbers of printers. With Bambu Lab, their business model is a little bit more complicated. The Bambu Lab business model is very much like Apple, where they get new users into their ecosystem and they hold on to them forever by, releasing high quality products, having a completely different user interface, and just locking people into their ecosystem. I think it's a good business model, and they produce some pretty fine products. All of the upgrades and replacement parts you have to get through Bambu Lab. So they want you to basically, keep coming back and to keep selling you stuff. And you have to pay for shipping unless you buy $60 worth of stuff. So you're buying some replacement part for your printer, you might as well throw in a couple of spools of filament while you're at it. And then the next thing you know, you're spending $100 on Bambu Lab's website, and they're making a ton of money off of you. And they're getting your customer data and all that kind of stuff. So Bambu Lab are definitely being a little bit smarter about this, getting those repeat customers to keep coming back and keep spending money on their website. Creality, it's just about moving printers. So as far as I can tell, that's the difference between the business models of these two companies. One thing I really like about Creality is their openness to modding. From the people I've talked to, they say, no, don't mod this machine. We don't want you modding it. But personally, I like modding things, so you can see I've put my aftermarket extruder on here. It might have caused a detrimental effect to the print quality on my stuff, but I'm getting that reliability back that I wanted. So it's a trade-off that I'm willing to make. All right, so I feel like I've done this comparison to death. I feel like in practical terms, these printers are very similar. Overall, the user experience and print quality that I get out of my P1P is a little bit higher, but at the same time you're dealing with that cloud stuff. I will say for anything that I'm planning on open sourcing, or if it's just random stuff that I print out that I find on the internet, I have no problem running it on this machine because it consistently delivers really good print quality. In practical terms, I get a lot more use out of the P1P than I do the K1, just because the K1 is kind of handicapped by its poor software and firmware implementation. I really think Creality needs to open that up, and at the same time, I really think Bambu Lab needs to improve their offline workflow and make the cloud more of an optional thing, not a necessary thing. At the end of the day, just get the printer that works for you. There's a lot of really fast bed slingers that are hitting the market, like the Elegoo Neptune 4 and the Soval SVO7. So in terms of speed printing, you don't have to break the bank. You don't have to buy a $500 or $600 printer just to get that speed printing capability. So with that said, I feel like I've completely exhausted everything I have to say about both of these printers. Remember, no matter which one of these printers you get, I get paid for the affiliate links, so make sure to click those in the link down below. Also, if you're looking for a nice sit-stand desk, make sure to hit up FlexiSpot. They've got some nice high-quality desks that won't break the bank, and if you're looking for a nice work surface to put your 3D printers on, these things will do the trick just fine. You can see in my time-lapse footage, the table was barely moving while these printers were thrashing about, so they're very sturdy and good tables for 3D printer applications. Or if you want to set up a sit-stand desk to do your work from home, you can do that as well. So I'm really glad to have FlexiSpot on the channel as a sponsor, and make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.